how's your shoot going in Italy?
Great. I'm in pre-production and preparing well, and cameras will start rolling soon. So I'm looking forward to that.
Before Mel Gibson redefined faith-based cinema, he didn't just sit in a writer's room. He went on a global pilgrimage into the heart of ancient silence. From the forbidden peaks of Greece to the shame of Italy, Gibson scouted more than just locations. He was scouting the soul of his next masterpiece. Today, we're tracing his footsteps through 8 sacred places that birthed the Passion and are now shaping the mind-bending reality of the resurrection. And yes, that's how passionate Gibson is, even in producing and directing. Buckle up. Mount Athos, Greece, the peak of silence. In June 2025, Gibson vanished into the autonomous monastic state of Mount Athos. To understand the metaphysical acid trip Mel Gibson has promised for the resurrection, you have to look toward the Aegean Sea. This isn't a tourist trap, it is a 1,000-year-old forbidden peninsula where women and children are strictly barred, and time is still measured by the Byzantine clock. Gibson didn't go for the views, he went for the silence. The director holed up at the Hilandar Monastery, a massive Serbian Orthodox fortress that has stood since the 12th century. This was no luxury vacation. He arrived during the Feast of Vidovdan, a day defined by the theology of sacrifice and the heavenly kingdom. Clad in a simple white shirt and, famously, a pair of Crocs, Gibson lived the life of a humble pilgrim. He attended grueling night-long liturgies and shared monastic meals of bread and wine with black-robed monks who have spent decades in complete isolation from the modern world. Why Athos? Because the monks there practice hesychasm, a mystical tradition of silent prayer aimed at achieving a direct vision of the uncreated light of God. For a filmmaker trying to depict the harrowing of hell and the literal vibration of a dead body returning to life, this wasn't just research, it was spiritual combat. Reports from the monastery suggest Gibson was deeply moved, telling the monks, "I have never felt such a strong connection to God anywhere else as here." He spent hours in the monastery's sacred treasury, examining 1,000-year-old manuscripts and icons that describe the very realms he is now building on sound stages. This visit provided the aesthetic spine for the sequel. In the Orthodox tradition, the resurrection is not just a miracle, it is a violent explosion of light that shatters the gates of Hades. Gibson's time on the Holy Mountain allowed him to soak in an ancient, grit-under-the-fingernails faith that rejects the sanitized versions of the Bible. He left with a blessing from Abbot Methodius and a head full of visions of the other side. Athos gave him the silence he needed to finally hear the roar of the resurrection. But before he found silence in Greece, he found a ghost town in Italy. Krakco, Italy, the ghost of the betrayer. If Mount Athos provided the divine light for the sequel, the abandoned ghost town of Krakco provided the heavy, suffocating darkness required for the first film's most haunting moment. Perched precariously on a cliffside in the Basilicata region, Krakco is a jagged skeleton of a city. Evacuated in the 60s after a series of landslides turned it into a literal death trap. For Mel Gibson, this wasn't just a picturesque ruin. It was the only place on Earth desolate enough to depict the death of Judas Iscariot. Gibson is a director who believes that geography has a spirit, and Krakco's spirit is one of profound abandonment. When you watch The Passion, the sequence where Judas is tormented by demonic children and eventually hangs himself from a gnarled tree, you are looking at the windswept outskirts of this dead city. Gibson spent days walking these silent, crumbling streets, searching for a location that felt physically cursed. He rejected dozens of lush, green Mediterranean valleys because they were too beautiful. He needed a place that looked like God had turned his back on it, a visual manifestation of the no man's land that the soul enters when it loses hope. The choice of Krakco was a stroke of atmospheric genius. The town's sun-bleached stones and hollowed-out windows provided a natural chiaroscuro that no lighting crew could replicate. It felt ancient, biblical, and terrifying. During the shoot, the crew spoke of a heavy, oppressive atmosphere that hung over the site, as if the stones themselves were mourning. Gibson leveraged this, using the verticality of the cliffs to emphasize the crushing weight of Judas's guilt. It was here that he mastered the art of theology through architecture. As he moves into the resurrection, Krakco's influence remains. The film's descent into the harrowing of hell reportedly draws from the vertical, labyrinthine decay of this Italian ghost town. The Sassi di Matera, Italy, the stone womb. To Mel Gibson, the Sassi di Matera isn't just a filming location, it is the organic Jerusalem. While most directors would head to a studio or a sanitized Holy Land tourist site, Gibson sought out the Shame of Italy, a prehistoric cave city carved into the tufa limestone of a massive canyon. For centuries, Matera was a place of staggering poverty where families lived in dark, damp grottos alongside their livestock. But in these Sassi stones, Gibson found the raw, visceral texture of the 1st century that he believed modern Jerusalem had lost to asphalt and tourism. Matera serves as the visual and spiritual stone womb for both the Passion and the upcoming Resurrection. Gibson famously rejected CGI in favor of these ancient, sun-bleached alleyways, noting that the way the light hits the limestone creates a natural, fiercely ancient glow. When Jim Caviezel stumbled under the weight of the cross, he wasn't on a set. He was on the Via Muro, a steep, lung-bursting staircase that has seen thousands of years of human struggle. Gibson utilized the city's verticality to mirror the spiritual hierarchy of the story, the low, shadowy caves of the Sasso Cavioso representing the earthly struggle, while the high, windswept belvedere of Murgia Timon served as the site of the crucifixion. For the Resurrection, Gibson returned to Matera in 2024 and 2025 with a new mission: to find the thin places where the physical world meets the supernatural. The city's labyrinthine layout, where the roof of one house is the floor of the next, perfectly suits his metaphysical vision of the 3 days Christ spent in the tomb. In Gibson's eyes, Matera is a living icon. The city itself underwent a resurrection, moving from a national disgrace in the 50s to a UNESCO World Heritage Site today. This theme of beauty rising from the dust is the very heart of his cinematic obsession. To film the sacred, he sought out a church carved directly into the earth, San Nicola dei Greci, the cave of the Last Supper. To film The Last Supper, Mel Gibson didn't build a wooden set on a soundstage. He descended into a 10th century Byzantine crypt carved directly into the limestone cliffs. This wasn't merely a logistical choice for a director seeking authentic stone walls. To Gibson, the location was a theological necessity. He wanted the institution of the Eucharist to feel as though it were being born from the very bones of the earth, bridging the gap between the primal world and the divine. The San Nicola dei Greci complex is an architectural marvel, a subterranean sanctuary where the ceiling is the living rock and the walls are adorned with fading 14th century frescoes of the crucifixion and various saints. When you watch the candlelit intimacy of the Last Supper in the Passion, you are seeing the natural chiaroscuro effect of this cave. Gibson, a fan of the painter Caravaggio, utilized the high arched iconostasis and the parallel apsidal naves to create a visual closed loop. The setting emphasizes that this was a secret high-stakes meeting, shielded from the Roman and Sanhedrin authorities by meters of solid stone. But for the sequel, The Resurrection, this location takes on an even more haunting significance. In the Byzantine tradition, represented by the church's frescoes, the resurrection is often depicted as the anastasis, Christ literally trampling the broken gates of Hades. Gibson's return to these caves during his 2024 and 2025 scouting trips suggests he is using the labyrinth of corridors within San Nicola to represent the threshold of the underworld. The church isn't just a building, it's a portal. Gibson has often spoken about visual catechism, the idea that an image can teach a complex theological truth better than 1,000 words. By choosing a site where the frescoes of the crucifixion are literally etched into the same rock where the bread and wine were shared, he creates a narrative circle. He isn't just making a movie, he is documenting a ritual in its ancestral home. The island of Malta, the shipwrecked sanctuary. While Italy provided the stone for the earthly Jerusalem, Mel Gibson needed something more expansive and fortress-like to represent the other realms in his sequel. In September 2024, the director embarked on a high-profile 5-day scouting mission across the island of Malta. Accompanied by an 11-member production team, Gibson didn't just look at beaches. He met with Prime Minister Robert Abela to discuss a vision that would turn the island into a cinematic gateway for the resurrection. To Gibson, Malta is a place where biblical history and military grit collide, a perfect fit for a film that explores the spiritual warfare following the crucifixion. Malta carries a unique, sacred weight in Gibson's map because of its direct link to the New Testament. This is the island where St. Paul was shipwrecked in 60 AD, bringing Christianity to the Mediterranean. Gibson explored the ancient fortifications of Valletta and the dramatic windswept cliffs of the coastline, searching for locations that could host the Fall of the Angels sequences he has teased for years. He needs environments that feel both ancient and epic, capable of representing the court of heaven and the chaos of the supernatural world. The island's massive stone bastions and deep water tanks offer a scale that traditional Italian villages simply cannot provide. Beyond the scenery, Gibson's interest in Malta is deeply tied to the island's history as the shield of Christendom. In 1565, the Great Siege of Malta saw a small band of knights and locals hold off the entire Ottoman Empire, a story Gibson has been obsessed with for decades. In fact, while scouting for the Resurrection, he confirmed plans for a massive miniseries about this siege. This fascination with spiritual and physical defiance is the engine behind his films. He sees Malta not as a filming set, but as a battlefield where the divine and the diabolical have met before. By integrating Malta into the production, Gibson is moving the story from the claustrophobic streets of Jerusalem to the cosmic scale of the Mediterranean. The island provides the limitless horizon required for a story that Gibson describes as a non-linear, metaphysical journey. It is here, among the fortresses that guarded the faith for centuries, that he is finding the visual language for the resurrection's aftermath. Sometimes the most sacred place isn't a ruin, but a temple of industry. Cinecittà Studios, Rome, building the third temple. Sometimes the most sacred place on a director's map isn't an ancient ruin or a silent mountain, but a temple of industry, where the supernatural is manufactured by hand. For Mel Gibson, Cinecittà Studios in Rome is that sanctuary. Known as the Hollywood on the Tiber, these legendary grounds have hosted everyone from Fellini to Scorsese. But for Gibson, they serve as the laboratory for his most ambitious theological experiments. It was here, in 2003, that he built a massive, meticulously researched reconstruction of 1st century Jerusalem, and it is here, in the newly minted Studio 22, that he has returned in late 2025 to film the bulk of The Resurrection. Cinecittà represents the bridge between Gibson's obsession with historical realism and his newfound interest in the metaphysical. While the outdoor shots in Matera provide the grit, the sound stages of Rome allow him to construct the unseen. For the sequel, Cinecittà has become the staging ground for what Gibson describes as an acid trip through the afterlife. To depict the harrowing of hell and the fall of the angels, Gibson required massive, custom-built stage constructions that could simulate other realms of existence. In these darkened halls, he isn't just directing actors, he is choreographing a cosmic war that involves thousands of years of tradition, spanning from the death of the last apostle back to the dawn of creation itself. The studio is also the site of a major creative pivot. In a move that shocked the industry in October 2025, Gibson transitioned from his original plan of digitally de-aging Jim Caviezel to casting a completely new ensemble, led by Finnish actor Jaakko Ottonen. Within the walls of Cinecittà, this new cast, including Mariella Garriga and Kasia Smutniak, has been immersed in Gibson's Aramaic and Latin world. The studio acts as a pressurized chamber where the modern world is shut out, and the cast is forced to inhabit a reality where every word and gesture carries the weight of eternity. By choosing to shoot entirely at Cinecittà for the interior and supernatural sequences, Gibson is honoring the craftsmanship of the Italian masters who came before him. He treats the soundstage like a cathedral, using lighting and set design to create a moving Caravaggio. The Holy Land, Israel, the invisible blueprint. While Mel Gibson has largely relied on the stone and spirit of Italy to film his biblical epics, his creative process is tethered to the literal geography of Israel. Over the decades, Gibson has made quiet, non-publicized research trips to Jerusalem and the Judean wilderness. To him, the Holy Land isn't a film set, it is the invisible blueprint that dictates the timing, the light, and the historical stakes of his scripts. Even though the modern city is too congested for a major production, Gibson treats the actual sites of the Passion as the primary source material that he must then translate into the cinematic language of Matera or Cinecittà. His obsession centers on the Garden of Gethsemane. Gibson's opening scene in The Passion was built around the botanical reality of the ancient olive trees that still stand in Jerusalem, gnarled, twisted, and seemingly immortal. He studied the topography of the Kidron Valley and the steep ascent to Caiaphas's house, to ensure that every drop of sweat and every labored breath in his film matched the physical toll of the real landscape. For the sequel, The Resurrection, his focus has shifted toward the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This site, which marks both the site of the crucifixion, Golgotha, and the empty tomb, serves as the anchor for his exploration of the 3 days. In 2024, reports surfaced that Gibson's scouting team had included Israel on their itinerary to ensure the metaphysical transition in the new film feels anchored in the soil of the Levant. He isn't looking for tourist landmarks, he is looking for the veins of the earth, the specific way the Judean sun sets, and the deep shadows of the limestone caves. He famously insisted on Aramaic and Latin to preserve a linguistic archaeology, and his visits to Israel are an extension of that same desire for meticulous authenticity. Ultimately, the Holy Land provides the theological yardstick for Gibson. He uses the real Jerusalem to keep his acid trip sequel from floating away into pure fantasy. By standing in the actual Garden of Gethsemane or walking the Via Dolorosa in private prayer, he absorbs the blood and bone of the history he is depicting. Finally, there is the place where faith meets the modern world. The private chapels, the hidden engine. Finally, the journey ends not at a world-famous landmark, but behind the closed doors of a private sanctuary. To understand the why behind Mel Gibson's films, you must look at his personal Agnus Dei chapel and the various traditionalist Catholic chapels he frequents across the globe. These aren't just places of worship for Gibson, they are the intellectual and theological engine rooms where the scripts for the Passion and the Resurrection were actually forged. While the world sees a Hollywood director, these hidden spaces see a religious revert who rejects the modernizations of the Second Vatican in favor of the ancient, rigorous Latin Mass. It is within these private spaces that Gibson immersed himself in the mystical visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich, the 19th century Augustinian nun. Her book, The Dolorous Passion of Our Lord Jesus Christ, serves as the literal storyboard for his films. From the demonic children tormenting Judas to the serpent in the garden and the harrowing details of the scourging, Gibson's facts are drawn from these private revelations. He considers these visions to be accepted truth, and he uses his private chapels to stay tethered to this specific blood-soaked mysticism. To Gibson, the Latin Mass is a living icon, and he views his filmmaking as a continuation of that same sacred ritual. For the upcoming Resurrection sequel, these chapels have provided the theological spine for his most controversial ideas. Gibson has spent hours in consultation with traditionalist scholars and clergy to ensure that his depiction of the harrowing of hell aligns with a pre-modern understanding of spiritual warfare. This isn't just movie making. For him, it is an act of reparation. He often says that he put his own hand in the film to drive the first nail into Christ's palm, a symbolic acknowledgement of his own culpability that he reflects on daily during the traditional liturgy. Ultimately, these private chapels are where the 8 places converge. They are the sites where the silence of Mount Athos, the stone of Matera, and the grit of the Holy Land are synthesized into a single vision. Gibson believes that the modern world has gone nuts, and that the only way back is through a return to the basics: faith, hope, and sacrifice. By grounding his work in the discipline of the old rite, he ensures that his metaphysical acid trip remains a deeply orthodox endeavor. For him, the most sacred place of all is the one where he confronts the cost of his own soul. The pilgrimage is complete, but the story is only beginning. If you want to know more about Gibson's journey and POVs in his spiritual films, subscribe to the channel.